Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chóo'onum, Nonéshkinum, all my relations. My name is Gus Mishki. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a first-year student in the Department of Ethnic Studies. In terms of my background, I'm part Chinese, and I have Alaska Native ancestors that I've been disconnected from. I'm trying to reconnect to. And I'll go ahead and also introduce other members of the first-year cohort. So Andrea Gaspar, she, her pronouns, is a community organizer from Tijuana and San Diego. And I'll turn it over to co-host.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Sims, she, her, hers. I am a first-year PhD student here at UCSD. I am a mixed race indigenous student, and I am super happy and honored that we have our guests here today. I'm also introducing Sharon Lassing, Danae, she, her, proud citizen of the Navajo Nation, and Cecilia Frescas Ortiz, she, her, from what is now known as Chihuahua, Mexico. I will now introduce, we have a form that'll be uploaded to the chat. This form is optional. You can choose to fill it in or not. It's essentially it's asking if folks would like to be added to a mailing list to better support our Payomkawichum and Kumeyaay relatives. I would also like to acknowledge that UCSD is on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay people.
And I just wanted to make a quick note about land acknowledgements. They've become pretty commonplace in university settings. And I just wanted to note that while this is a good practice, we think that these land acknowledgement practices need to be coupled with action. And we hope that by joining us today, you'll think about the meaningful ways that you can build community with Kumeyaay and Payomkawichum relatives.
Okay, so I'm going to be introducing our first guest once my internet works. Our first guest is Amy Admire from the Rincon Youth Storytellers, director at the Rincon Indian Education Center. Amy Admire is Payomkawichum from the Rincon Indian Reservation with 20 years of teaching experience. The reduction of suicide, substance misuse, and the impacts of trauma on young people is the fire that fuels her work. Amy's work consists of connecting young people to their customs, language, and truth with the ultimate goal of healing for her people and all people. Amy is a 2019 recipient of the National Indian Health Board's Local Impact Award and is currently running for the Assembly Delegate seat in California's Assembly District 75.
All right, I will now introduce the Honorable Dr. Stan Rodriguez, who is from the Santa Isabel Band of the Ipai Nation. Dr. Rodriguez is an educator, a language teacher, and a tribal singer. He received his doctoral degree from UCSD's Department of Education Studies. He is an advocate for his community's culture and traditions and serves in a number of advising and teaching roles in San Diego and Kumeyaay communities. I'm super excited and grateful for our guests today who are here to share their knowledge, and now we will turn it over to them for their presentation.
Mr. Stan, would you like to reintroduce yourself? And I'm not sure where our slides are. Are you guys gonna make us a co-host, or are we already a co-host? Gus? I am in. Okay. I'm waiting to see if I'm going to be able to share my screen. Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Stan Rodríguez y yo soy Ipay Kumeyaay de Reserva Santa Isabel. Y ahorita son muy felices porque nosotros estamos aquí. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stan Rodriguez. I am an Ipay from Ipay Kumeyaay from the Santa Isabel Reservation. I also sit on tribal council as an elected official. We are servants of our people. So for me, it's a great honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Notung Amy Admayaka, no Washnai, no Payomkawichum, no Guam Joseph Morales Delacobe and Marcella Mason. My name is Amy Admire. I'm from the Rincon Indian Reservation. And I am also happy to be here with the Ethnic Studies Department. I'm super honored that you all invited us here to share our experiences and some of our history with you all. You know, a lot of times I feel like we're, you know, preaching to the choir, but we forget that we all have really different experiences and backgrounds. And so we just are really excited to share with you all. So I'm just, again, waiting. I'm trying to read the chats as you all, as you all are trying
Amy,
to
so you should be able to use the screen share now. This is Jose. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm the tech person.
That's okay.
Try it and see if it works on your end if you press on screen share.
I got screen share. Can you all see my language here?
We can definitely see your screen.
Okay. All right, so this presentation I do with some of my colleagues from the Indian Education Equity team for our new and incoming teachers. So I just kind of modified it and added some information that the ethnic studies cohort was wanting to know about and for us to share today. So it is from the lens of education and of healing. A lot of the work that I do, the goal for me is healing for our people. That is ultimately the goal. We really want healthy families in the future, and I visualize that for the next generation. So again, it's Chóo'onum, Nonéshkinum, all my relations, the Colloquium. Welcome. This picture is of our beautiful children from a camp we do every year called Tribal Education Alliance at Camp Hamilton, getting our kids back to our homelands. We're going to open today in a good way. Mr. Stan is graciously letting me show a video of our students. These are the Rincon Youth Storytellers at a school where we do assemblies and performances every year for California Indian Day, which is the last Friday of September. So I hope you can all hear it. I think I have to mute myself, so tell me if you cannot hear it.
Amy, I think when you share your screen, there's like a little button at the bottom. I think it's on the bottom left that says share audio as well. So you might want to like reshare your screen and click that, because I think that'll be how we hear.
So reshare the screen?
I think, yeah, when you click a share screen, There'll be like on the bottom left, there's like a little button that says like share audio. So you click
Yes.
that.
Don't mute yourself.
Okay. I don't see it. I'll tell you the volume on this video is really low. So if you all have volumes you can press, you might want to increase the volume, but I don't see the share.
Also, Amy, if you click on the video square, when it shows you the timeline underneath, if you click on the little speaker icon, that might unmute it, like directly on the little YouTube window. Yeah, see that little speaker icon? No, okay, never mind. That didn't work.
Okay, well, we have this problem too. We do classes Wednesday nights, storytelling, and we try to share videos and always run into this problem. But I hope that you could feel the medicine, those of you out there, from our young people. They were singing Sequiquina Shumekuta, which is a Cupeño song that was gifted to us by our instructor, Paul Miranda at Paula. And it's a story about two birds in a tree. They are sparrows or swallows, and they're arguing about how to sing the song. And one of them wants to say, swallow, swallow, and the other one wants to say, shumekuta, shumekuta, which is funny face, funny face. So, so this dance that the children created is to represent those two birds fighting in a tree. Mr. Stan, did you want to say anything to open us? You're on mute, Mr. Stan.
All right. Excuse me. So what I was saying, for our people, the Kumeyaay people, we are a people of the islands, the ocean, the valleys, the mountains, the desert, and parts of the Colorado River, and from San Diego all the way down to about 100 miles below Ensenada. And this is a traditional territory of our people, the Kumeyaay people. As you can see many of our villages, many of them are gone now. But the Kumeyaay people, we have 12 reservations here in San Diego. As you know, San Diego has more reservations than any other county in the country. There's 18 of them, and of the 18, there's 12 that are Kumeyaay. Paula has some Ipai, along with the Cupeño, and in Imperial Valley, Fort Yuma is Quetzal and Desert Kumeyaay, and into Baja is San Jose de la Zora, Neji, La Necua, La Huerta, also San Jose de Tecate, and a couple others. Santa Catarina is Pai Pai and Kowach Kumeyaay. So this is, part of our traditional territory. If some of you don't know, the word La Jolla is a Kumeyaay word, Matkulahui, which means the place of the caves. And and we have village sites that are under the Pacific Ocean right now, which speak to the time that our people have been here since the last ice age. And if you go into the desert, you'll see on the mountains where the desert is, on the hills, there's rock outcroppings that were built fish traps that have been there for untold thousands of years. So that's a little bit about our history. Go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
That's okay. So spoiler alert, Mr. Stan just told you how many reservations there are. Hey, that was going to be my question for the chat. But when I do these presentations, I always ask people if they know where they are. But since we're creating the space today for some truth telling, I decided to rephrase that and say, do you know whose land you're on? Because I think that's really important. A lot of people live in San Diego County their whole lives and have no idea whose traditional and homelands they are on, or who the original people are. And so I think that's always important to ask yourself, whose land am I on? And who do I need to be acknowledging, right? And so as Mr. Stan said, the Northern reservations where we are from, where Stan and I are, Mr. Stan and I are the what's known as the Northern Reservations, and our clinic calls them the 9 consortium reservations because they all get together and fund our local clinic. So that's the Inyaha, San Pascual, Rincon, Palma, Paula, La Jolla, Los Coyotes, Mesa Grande, Santa Isabel. If you ever go to Julian or out to the desert, you're going to probably pass through one of our reservations. I also want to make mention here that we have a reservation or a band of Kumeyaay, not a reservation, but a band of Kumeyaay, the Inyaha Cosmet, who do not have any land. They have an office in Escondido with a very small number. I'm not sure if Mr. Stan knows, but I know it's a small number of members. And so we're very blessed that they have been able to continue alongside of us. We also have our Payomkawichum people from Pechanga and Saboba. And when you look at our treaties, all of us were meant to be in one big area originally. But instead, we are now in 2 separate counties, San Diego and Riverside. So Pechanga and Saboba are in Riverside. And Stan mentioned there are 18 reservations. Of those 18 reservations, there are only 4 original tribes. So while we have transplants, and we welcome all of our transplants, all the Native people from around the country, there are only the 4 original tribes from San Diego County, who are the Kumeyaay, Mr. Stan's people, the Payomkawichum, my people, and the Kupeño and the Cahuilla. And so again, when we're talking about land acknowledgements, it's very easy to be able to acknowledge all the tribes since there's only 4. And my people are known as Atahum or Payomkawichum. Atahum is what we call the people, meaning specifically the Indian people. Because if you're not part of the Indian community, we have names for you being an Easterner or a Northerner or a Southerner or a non-Native person. But the word for people is Atahum in our language, and Payomkawichum is the name we have for ourselves. We're also known as Luceño. That is our slave name, or the name that was given to us by the Spaniards due to our proximity to the missions and the river. Actually to the river and then the mission. And these are some of my family members. This gentleman on the left is my great uncle Lucario, and he was a blind storyteller from Rincon, and I grew up hearing about him all my life and then realized he was my relative, and realized that I was also storytelling, and so very blessed to know that history. And then my uncle and his wife on the right, Juan Sotelo and Encarnacion Collect. And then again, like I said, we get our name from the mission, but we're really trying to pull away from that. Part of our decolonizing process is to use the name that we have for ourselves, which is Payomkawichum. Payomkawichum, again, means the people of the West. Our traditional homelands are San Luis Obispo to Encinitas and out to Palomar Mountain. So all of that area we consider our home. And we'll talk more about that later. But those are our traditional homelands. And then Mr. Stan, yes, I have space for you here if you wanted to share more about the Kumeyaay. I put some photos in here of Little Stone. He's an awesome rapper from the Kumeyaay Nation at Viejas. And then your work that you do with the people at Baja, There's a picture of, I forget her name, I apologize, but she showed us how to make shawi up at San Pascual. And then Miss Bernice being the new chairwoman.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Real quick, Inyaha Cosmet does have a reservation land.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Good.
It's so isolated, very few people live on it. And Cosmet is landlocked, so they're working on getting an easement to get in there. Also, a couple of the other reservations that are out there, the Laguna Reservation, which was taken out of trust, that land is still there. Carmen Lucas still lives up there. And then also Captain Grande, which is in between Verona and Viejas and Los Conejos. So those are other reservation lands. So for the Kumeyaay people, just real quick going around, the lady who's making the shawi or the acorn mush, she's a Mesa, I believe that's Yolanda Mesa, and she's a Kumeyaay from the Neji Reservation, just right across the border from Campo, close to a place called El Hongo. She's, her and her 4 sisters are the last speakers of the language up on the Neji Reservation. To her left is our chairwoman, Bernice Paipa. She's our current chair at the time. She's a dynamic individual who's balancing traditional knowledge with you know, what we're doing here in the 21st century. And as you can tell, you know, our people, you know, come from all different places. One of the things that has happened, and we say that our culture, everything that we are, was like an askaya pot that was shattered onto the ground, and each community has a piece of our tradition. Before the border, before all these things, our people would come together and share. It makes it much, much more difficult to do it, but we still have our organic scholars, our indigenous knowledge, and the people who know. I mean, as you can see, you know, going back and forth across the borders, it is important to share. It's important to share our songs, our stories, all these different things, because this helps to keep us together as a people. And for a people to survive, that is very important. So go ahead, Ms. Admire.
Thank you, Ya'ash Stan. So Mr. Stan told you about their traditional homelands. And usually at this point, we talk about the similarities and differences between our local tribes and reservations. You know, Stan's people and my people don't speak the same language. Mine is a Yuto Aztecan-based language, and his is a human-based language. Ohom, Ya'ash Stan?
Yes, it's a Hokan language, human-based language.
So I can't really understand him very well, but if I come across a Kupeño or a Kuya, I can more understand them a little better. But I do try to learn from Mr. Stan. We have a lot of Kumeyaay students in our programming, and so we always want to honor the children in our programs by incorporating their language and their indigenous wisdom as well. We also have, some of you might know, we have Indian education centers on almost all of our reservations. So most of us offer rattle classes, song and dance classes. And while we do offer those same types of classes, our songs might differ and our style of dances differ. And you can usually tell where a person is from by the way we dance and by the cadence of our songs. For our people, we do not traditionally sing bird songs, although we have adopted the practice and incorporated it into some of our groups. We have intertribal bird singers, intertribal groups who do sing bird, but traditionally it's not a part of our Payomkawichum ways. We have many, many other different types of songs, but because of the elder loss, because of the loss of culture, we no longer have access or sing those songs. And so we're very grateful to the Kumeyaay for sharing their songs, and to the Kupeño and to the Kuya for again sharing their songs and their customs with us. I don't know if you want to add to that, but
No, thank you. Yes, I mean, our stories, even though we have different languages, our creation story is very similar. And many of the song cycles are similar. With the Kumeyaay people, we have 22 different song cycles, and what the human peoples. So Kumeyaay, we're part of the human groups. So the Quetzal, the Yumas, the Mojaves, the Wallapai, Yavapai, Havasupai, Maricopa, and then down south, the Cocopa, Pai Pai, Kiliwa, and Cochimi were all part of the human language family. So I can hear them and I can understand some of what they're saying. But yeah, it's, you know, each different group has their own way. And our songs, there's hundreds of songs in each song cycle, and each song tells a story. And put together, it's a narrative. It's like a book that gets passed on from generation to generation so that we can teach our people. Now, language and culture, they support each other. When you cut one out from the other, it makes the other difficult to continue on. This is why it's so important that our language programs are geared towards language revitalization and also cultural revitalization, because this is so important for us, because this land here, we say this is our holy land. This is our promised land. So, you know, and we are part of it. We don't own it, we are part of it. So this is the importance of this for our people. Thank you, Amy.
And so, and we try to talk about things like, you know, stereotyping. Again, this presentation is generally towards educators, not stereotyping our children, assuming that our children come from gaming tribes. Not all children come from gaming tribes. You know, not all children or families receive money or dollars. And so just being aware in that way of not traumatizing people, you know, by making assumptions about the local Native people, and asking questions. It's okay to ask us a question. If it's in a good way and coming from a good place, we're happy to answer questions. And a lot of us work together. You know, Mr. Stan, in one of the pictures, he comes and talks to our young people. Many of our reservations try to work together for the uplifting of our youth. We do camps every year. We do thinking of DTI conferences for the young people. We do summer programs together. We just created an Indian education equity team of Indian Education Center staff and parents to advocate for our children and our school system, because there's still some things and policies that need to be addressed. And we need to be united in addressing the issues that are concerning to our children and our families. So thank you for letting us share. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end, I believe there's space for that. And I think someone's monitoring it for us. If there's anything emergent we need to get to or can answer right away. So we get this question all the time. What do we call ourselves? You know, whether we're Indians, you know, principals always say, I don't know how to address the students. And I'm like, well, they're kids, first of all. So we address them as they, you know, as they are. But I always explain it like this. Indians, my grandmother would have been fine being called an Indian because, you know, no one told them about Columbus or any of those other things. So she only ever knew to be called an Indian. She was fine with that. And then there's the people in my mother's generation who, from the 70s, who fought for legislation. You know, the story is from a mentor of mine, Juana Mahal, who says, you know, we are called American Indian because they fought for that right, you know. to be recognized in America. And I totally respect that and raise my hands to those people who fought for us to be recognized. And then Native Americans, that's kind of more my generation. And then the younger people coming behind us, we're trying to be more inclusive of everyone. We really want to break down those barriers between all the indigenous people of Turtle Island. So, you know, we're kind of leaning towards indigenous. That works for us too. So I think it's just context and who you're talking to, and also letting people self-identify. You know, it's okay to ask people, how do you identify? Mr. Stan, do you have?
No, the identity has been something that has just moved. I mean, we are Ipai, Tipai, Kumeyaay people, but when the Spaniards came, they named us the Digueños, which were the people from San Diego, and there was a lot of things that happened, resistance that took place, but you know, then it moved on to Indians, and just like what Ms. Admire said, many of the old timers are just comfortable using the word Indian. I mean, I've heard it too, I'm comfortable with it. Then Native American, that I'm comfortable with too. And one year they tried to use original American. It didn't last too long, but it didn't catch on. So, but the thing is, to know that we as Native people, you know, it's not just one name. You know, it's not static for us. It continues to move, but in the end, we are from where we came from. So I will always be Ipai. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Stan. I also want to mention here that it is customary for us to introduce or greet each other in the other person's language. That is a sign of respect. So when Mr. Stan calls me, I know I'm like so ingrained in my saying miu miu, but I do try to say hauka. And then if a Kuya person, you know, I can address them a mia Juan, and a Kupeno person a mia Hua. So we do try to have those politeness, respect protocols. Protocols are very important to us. So I just want to share that here. Because again, these are simple things. There's only 4 of us, right? 4 original tribes. So if you're working with young children or families, you can take the time to learn those 4 greetings, which would be a very big step in a healing process for us. It might seem small, but it can really make big strides towards bridging gaps.
No, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, that there's one elder from Rincon. He taught me how to play peon, and he was married to a woman from Mesa Grande. And he said when he went to Mesa Grande, and he could talk Ipai Kumeyaay, he could talk it. He also spoke, you know, Luiseño, he spoke Spanish, and he spoke English. He spoke 4 languages. And he told me it was very common for people to speak the different languages. And the proper way is when you go into somebody's territory, you talk to them the way that they speak. And when they come into your territory, they're going to reciprocate. It was all built on mutual respect for each other.
Yes. Thank you. And again, this goes back to how we have, again, we're educators. So I work in the public school system, largely running programs that are considered supplemental, but for us, they're considered essential. And so just knowing that history can help administrators understand why that protocol is so important and why our language classes should be implemented in the school system. Thank you. So we're gonna share a little bit of history here. Again, I always feel like we're teaching or preaching to the choir, but I know that everyone's level of information and knowledge about Native Americans, and especially the San Diego area people, is different. I realize we all get different teachings and curriculum in our school system, which is crazy since we're all in San Diego, but we all do get such a varied education here. So we're just going to go through some of this with you, squeezing 500 years in 20 minutes or so. Mr. Stan can do it now. So I just always love this in school, right? We need to stop doing this. We need to stop saying that people discovered us or discovered California or discovered the United States. We need to change our language of how to describe this process of how people came to be here and the impacts that it had on the original people of this land. We were not saved or discovered by anyone. We were, however, murdered and enslaved through systematic genocidal campaigns, including the Spanish, Mexican, and American colonizers. Some people, the scientists in school, speaking of curriculum, will say that my people have been here 10,000 years. But our stories, like Mr. Stan said, tell us that we've been here since time immemorial. These stories, which were oral before written down, that's a preservation of our history. This is the way we record things. Prior to having books and a written language. This is a record of our history, and we believe these things to be true, and that this is how we came to be here. So that for us can be really traumatizing to say that we've only been here 10,000 years, because it goes against what we've been taught from our stories. So again, we've been hunters, gatherers, tool makers, organized systems of trade. Mr. Stan was talking about the languages we spoke. We had to speak many languages because we already had trade systems in place. Prior to Columbus showing up, Juan Cabrillo, the other people, there's evidence that the Chinese were here before that, the Russians were here before that. So, we had met people before and, traded with them and had relationships. Mr. Stan?
Yes, thank you. And this is something that when we talk about the narrative that has taken place here in this area, many educators start off with the Spanish landing in 1542, September 27, Juan Cabrillo Rodriguez. And they even do a pageant. They used to do a pageant over by Point Loma, where they'd have somebody dressed up as Juan Cabrillo land on the bay, and they'd have these people dressed up as Kumeyaay genuflect in front of the cross and the Spanish flag. This did not happen. This is nowhere close to the truth. What happened was they attempted to take liberties, and they some of their crew was shot by Kumeyaay arrows. Our people fought back, and our people continued to fight back. They didn't come back again until 1769, when they attempted to put the first mission out by, we call it Cossay, which means the dry place. Many people know that as Old Town San Diego. That in 1769, that first mission was attacked. It was not destroyed, but they moved it. Later on, they moved it a few miles up the river to its, the present day mission. And the atrocities that took place were incredible. How they would treat the people. So 2 people escaped from that mission and came back with hundreds of warriors who attacked that mission, burned it to the ground, found Father Jaime, killed him and 2 other people. So these are part of the things that were going on. Also in 1780, the missions on the Colorado River were attacked. In 1810, I believe, the mission between Tijuana and Ensenada was attacked. The mission in Santa Catarina was attacked, all up and down the peninsula. So our peoples, our native peoples, treated this as an incursion, as encroachment into our territory, and we did fight back. The thing that devastated many of the peoples was the diseases, smallpox epidemics, measles epidemics. These are things that decimated populations. 3/5 of the population was actually killed by disease, not just by the fighting. So as these things continued, when Mexico gained independence, they were supposed to secularize the missions, but they were started giving the land to Spaniards who were born in Mexico, and this caused another wave of attacks. The Kumeyaay almost overran San Diego 3 times. One time it was the attack was broken by a British schooner who used their cannons in the bay, but it got so bad that the governor at the time went down into farther into central Mexico to get prisoners, freed them, and made a militia. They called it the Cholo militia, and they were able to keep San Diego from getting overrun. So this is part of our history too, and people don't know it. And when I know when they make that 4th grade mission project, a lot of people think it's a really great thing, but to be honest with you, that is a romanticized version of what really took place, because the bottom line is they were able to take parts of the coast, but they were never able to take the inland areas. And it's an affront to the Native people, because what they did was they used Native people as slave laborers. What they were going to do was teach them rudimentary skills, indoctrinate them into Christianity, and have a servant caste in waiting in anticipation of Spanish colonists coming in. Well, that never happened. But the mark on the people is still there today. Go ahead, Ms. Admire.
I love hearing you. But Stan is speaking also to the point that those mission systems, which we know, those mission projects, they are finding their way out of the school system. But what we need to do is make concentrated efforts to put these stories that Mr. Stan is talking about in place of those projects, because these are the stories that need to be told. This is how people will realize, that we're still here and not graduate high school and not know that Native Americans still reside in San Diego County. So yes, the first era of genocide is the Spaniards coming. Then we have the Mexicans, and then we have the Americans. And I just want to bring attention, Mr. Stan said something about the population. The estimates vary depending on what research you look at, but about 300,000 when the missions here in California. And then after the gold rush, which we'll go through, 10 to 20,000. And so those numbers, again, reflect genocide. And anyone who says they don't needs to rethink what genocide means. And so Mr. Stan talked a little bit about the Mexican era. I don't know that I have, we could talk about the enslavement, how, for me, what I want people to know about the mission system and the era is that it was the beginning of the destruction of our families and what our families look like and how we knew how to parent. And it will begin what is, again, the breakdown of how we know how to care for ourselves, and how we knew how to care for ourselves, and then making us self-reliant on other people for our survival, which still continues today via the grant system that a lot of our reservations work on and those kinds of policies. So that to me is really the most important. So I'm sure if Mr. Stan has something else, and he told me.
No, thank you very much. And as we move on into the American era, during the Mexican-American War, actually, the only battle that took place in California took place in San Diego. It was the Battle of San Pasqual. And in that battle, the Mexicans won that battle against the Americans. But it was going back and forth when the United States finally took California. The native population was over 80% compared to non-natives in California. Within a few years, that population had dropped, I mean, significantly. The governor at the new governor, the first governor at the time, Governor Barrett, he created bonds to pay for the scalping, the murders of Native people. I mean, the atrocities that took place, especially up north in Northern California, were incredible. When we talk about a Holocaust, I mean, whole tribal groups were just annihilated. One of his statements was, the battle of extermination will continue until every last Native American here in California is dead. And this was a racial cleansing. So what happened in these few years, what happened was the state Senate was in active debate on what to do with the Native issue. Some people said, let's continue with our process of extermination, which for a baby or a little child was $2, was 50 cents. For a woman was $2.50, and for a man was $5 for their head or their scalp. So part of the group was looking at doing that. Another part was saying, let's get all the Indians and send them to Indian territory in Oklahoma. And then one group said, well, let's make treaties with the ones that are left. So, and I'm going to let Ms. Admire start talking about that part.
Okay, I'm just going to back up a little bit. But thank you, Mr. Stan. I have a video here of how we got into the missions, how we lost our land bases, our villages, just to give you a visual of what that looks like. And people always tell me, I can't hear it. Well, there's no sound, so I might read it just so you don't feel like you're not hearing anything. So what you're focusing on here is the visual. And this is about LA, but it's very similar to down here as well. It's about the mission system. And this is a project put together by UCR. And we'll talk about the word migration later. So in 1769, when Spaniards came to settle Alta California, over 10,000 Indians lived in the area of present-day Los Angeles. Within decades, most Indians would relocate from their native villages to Spanish missions. And again, we'll talk about the word relocate. One by one, native villages faded away as the population of the region gradually and dramatically moved to the missions. This project documents and visualizes this great migration in the context of present-day Los Angeles. So this project started in 2013. You can see the major cities. Here are the mission San Gabriel, next to all the native villages, San Juan Capistrano as well. Every one of those dots is supposed to represent one person. And now there's another mission. And you can see what happened to our villages. Subsequent migrations and the emergence of present-day Los Angeles would erase virtually all traces of Indian villages in this region. However, these sites still retain their importance for Native peoples today. Thank you for letting me share that with you. I think what's important for me here also in this video, when we talk about sites, all of this land is a quote unquote site to me, to our people. All of it is sacred. And I think that's really important to remember. You know, when we say, let's preserve this or that, I feel like my perspective is preservation of all the land and stewardship of all the land. And how can, you know, people out there help us be good stewards of all the land now that we all live on it together, and be respectful of the original owners of the lands. Also, we admire our friends at UCR for putting that effort together and bringing us that project. I just want to acknowledge the words that we use, like migration and relocation. That implies that we were complicit or agreeable in some way to the relocation and the migration when it was forced upon us, largely. As time went on, of course, people got used to the missions being there, and some of them went there for food and shelter because of what had happened to them. So, you know, food and shelter became harder and harder to find. So again, just putting those things out there to get people to think about them. So, and then just a reminder, once inside the mission, most Native Americans weren't allowed to leave. Typically, the Spanish did not consider this to be imprisonment, since, like Stan said, they were supposed to have left within a decade, but it ended up lasting for over 70 years. So, Mr. Stan, if you don't have anything else to say about the secularization of the missions, I mean, I could go on and on, but again, time frame. But I have here in my notes that the Mexican government confiscated California mission properties and exiled the Franciscan friars. The missions were secularized or broken up, and their property was sold or given away. Native Americans were told that they were going to get some of their lands back, some of the places where their villages were, but that never happened. Those properties were sold or given away to wealthy Mexicans, Spaniards, and you'll see those big ranchos like in Fallbrook, Bonsall area. I cite those areas because that's where I see them out our direction. So again, the land was supposed to be returned to the Indians, but instead left them homeless, and many became indentured slaves to the Mexicans and these wealthy ranch owners. So again, the gold rush Mr. Stam talked about, although the gold rush was certainly one of the most prolific periods of indigenous murder, it was really just an extension of an already violent system created by the Spanish missions of California. Officially, Indians were considered gente sin razón, and I probably butchered that, but people without reason. So up and down the coast, Catholics were enslaving thousands of Indians by adopting them into Christian flocks and holding them hostage through floggings, imprisonment, and threats of death. By 1818, 86% of all the abducted natives met their demise at the hands of physical violence and were buried in mass graves behind the church. That's one of my giant pains, is that people can buy private plots at San Luis Rey Mission, where our people were buried in mass graves. I think that should be a practice that should be discontinued. So, Mr. Stan, oh, I think also, well, let me see. So again, here, Mr. Stan was talking about some of the atrocities that happened up north. There is evidence in newspapers from up north that the rivers of the Sacramento River would run red with the amount of native blood that was flowing in it, because they had to clear the area for gold. Also because our people resisted working in the mills and or being enslaved. There's a plaque down here in the bottom right that says Sutter's Mill Site, along with the statues that get put up all over the United States about the Confederate people. We also put up plaques throughout California, like Mr. Stan said, romanticizing the genocide of the people of our lands. Sutter's Mill, he enslaved hundreds of Native Americans and used them as a free source of labor and makeshift militia with which he defended his territory. He would not have become this rich or well-known or had the means, I guess, to possess this property and find all this gold or become a businessman without doing it on the backs of Native Americans. He set the stage for their genocide. Those who did not work for him were considered enemies. And he also had enslaved a lot of women. There are accounts of that, leading to a very low population of Native American women during the gold rush period. And Mr. Stan, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you for sharing about the mass graves at the missions, because at the mission in San Diego, there is a mass grave of Kumeyaay. And to show how kind-hearted the people that were running the mission are, even today, it was what, in the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, they wanted to make a bingo parlor over by the San Diego mission. They were going to put it right on the Kumeyaay graveyard. So that's, you know, how much they thought of us as the people. And that's recent. That's just recent. So there were protests that took place. They decided not to, no doubt. But, you know, that's how, you know, the continued way that people look upon us as Native people. And just like what Ms. Admire was saying, was that, yeah, up north, there was a Holocaust. I mean, it was incredible what happened. And, you know, we talked about the bounties that were put on Native Americans. So go ahead, Ms. Admire.
I know we're on a time schedule. It's so hard to get to all this in this time frame. The cohort asked us to talk, and I don't want to gloss over too much, honor all the people that we're talking about, our ancestors. So I tried to do that here. There were the unratified treaties during the 1850s. They came around and did censuses, or under the guise of censuses, also in the 1850s, and made treaties with our people. And these are the people on the right-hand side that were part of Stan's treaty at Santa Isabel. And I just wanted to honor them, because these people who made their marks on these papers, they trusted the federal government. They trusted these people who came out to us and said, you know, we will give you this territory if you do not ask for any other land forever in your life, right? Like, they were trying to survive and save their families and give their families a safe place to be. so that we could survive and the grandkids could survive. And I just, when I look at and I read all these names, you know, I feel how they must have felt. I feel betrayed, you know, and angry a lot of the times. And I try to, part of my healing is to try to understand and to forgive. But so I just wanted to honor them here. And Mr. Stan, I know we're running short on time, but if you wanted to add.
I'll talk very fast. Yes, so the 18 treaties that were made, if you see on January 5th, 1852, the Treaty of Temecula was created for the Luiseños and part of the Korea people. And after that, 2 days later, the Treaty of San Isabel was signed January 7th, 1852. It promised us a reservation from the Mexican border all the way to the end of San Diego County, and from east of El Cajon all the way to Ocotillo in the desert. So these treaties were never abrogated by any of the people who signed them or the villages. Now you got to remember what was happening in 1852. This was on the eve of the Civil War. So there were a lot of people coming into California from Georgia, the Carolinas, places like that. And they had Confederate leanings. So they petitioned the federal government saying, if you ratify these treaties, we're going to side with the Confederacy. So needless to say, these treaties were not ratified. Huge land grabs were taking place. And again, our people did not abrogate from any parts of that. And this is still unceded territory.
Yes, it's not just a slogan or an piece of artwork, which I do like, and I put one in here. These are stolen lands, yes. And we need to be real about that. When we talk about land acknowledgements, to acknowledge something means to acknowledge the truth about something. And so that's what we're doing, is we're acknowledging the truth. And because this is and I'm an educator, Mr. Stan's an educator, and this presentation is generally given to educators, I have to include these young women here who in 1860, again, were during the John Sutter time that our curriculum glorifies. These children were still being hunted for money. It was still okay to kill an Indian way into the 1900s. I won't say way, okay, into the 1900s, early 1900s, it was still okay to kill Indians for money if they were a problem for you. And the way that we're treated in schools is still with that mindset that we are part of the Indian problem. In my area, and if you have, if any of your districts have a impact aid, it's Title 8. If you have an impact aid grant, you have what's called Indian policies and procedures. And I find it very traumatizing to use that language for us. And if you read through them, they still, to me, come from that perspective that we are a problem that we need to be dealt with, and that money is being used to deal with us, if that makes sense. That's how it makes me feel. I'm not speaking for anyone else, but that's how it makes me feel, to continue to have these Indian policies and procedures in our school system. Mm-hmm. So, and again, at this time, all education was considered free for all children in California, but again, not for our children, and not for the Black Americans either, or the African Americans. And we have a few more minutes before the Q&A, I'm being told. But here's where we usually talk about the 21st century policies that impact us then and impact us now. Some of you are probably familiar with the boarding schools. Our boarding school in our area was Paris. And it became Sherman, which is still in operation today. Some of you might be familiar with it, or your children or cousins might go there. And then there was the 1924 Citizenship Act, which my grandmother had her paper in her bureau before it burned down. But she was always like, I don't know if it was pride, but it was more like a see, I'm a person kind of a thing, like, because we were never thought of as people before. So she was like, here's my paper to say I'm a person, right? And so that's kind of, amazing. Think how that must feel to be recognized as a human being on a piece of paper. And then the Indian Reorganization Act, the Indian Education Act, of course. A lot of policies still exist on this Education Act of 1972 at the Office of Ed. And the 1978 American Indian Religious Freedom Act, the students get blown away when I tell them that when I was a child, we could not have Indigenous Peoples Day at school. We could not have bird singers on campus. Mr. Stan has been gracious enough, and other people, leaders in our community, to come to our school and sing for us and honor us with dances, and language, and all those things would not be permitted when I was a child. And so that really just, again, blows them away. So there have been some gains, but really, really far to go. Mr. Stan, did you want to?
No, I like what you said. I mean, there were so many things that were happening. The Miriam report that happened in the 1920s, that talked about, the land grabs. We also had the Mission Indian Federation that was going on here, and there was fights between that and the BIA group. So there was a lot of things that were happening. When we talk about the Indian Reorganization Act that happened after that, were to reorganize the situation on the reservation. There was other things that happened. The Hoover Report in the 1940s that led to the Termination Act. They wanted to terminate our tribes. They wanted to take the land, and that was eventually stopped. But the Indian Education Act, that came out of the 1960s report from Senator Robert Kennedy. And then, when you're talking about the Freedom of American Indian Religion Act, which was passed in August 11th, 1978, this gave us the same rights to religious freedom that everyone else in the United States enjoyed. And just by doing this, I mean, it just speaks to to how the government treated our people. So then, we go into NAGPRA, and then in the 1990s, Senator Unyaway from Hawaii created the Native American Language Protection Act. So these are things that our people are still, as the original Americans, our people are still struggling to put to revive parts of our culture that have been suppressed. Thank you.
Oh. And I just want to remind people, this is a picture I always put up when I'm calling community to school board meetings or Title VI meetings. They took our children to put them in boarding schools. Remember, the word school is a very loose term to describe it. Nobody was learning to read or write. They were learning to be indentured servants for other people. They were learning to sew and to shoe horses and to be blacksmiths and to be cooks. But our people, this is a Oglala Sioux, they would move to where their children were, and then they were fought off. They were killed for doing that. But we always cared about our children as we do today. And I know we have to start wrapping up, but we do want to share a few more things with you. We were asked about the Federal Trust Agreement. Those of you who do not know, it's really important to me because the Federal Trust Agreement is an agreement between nations, the federal government and our nation. So it's supposed to be nation to nation. But the federal trust responsibility to Indian nations is to protect Indian trust lands and Indian rights to our lands, the protection of tribal sovereignty and rights of self-governance, the provision of basic social, medical, and educational services. And then the National Indian Education Association, the federal government has a fiduciary responsibility to provide resources and funding for Native education. And so again, the work that I do is holding the schools accountable for this relationship. They must educate our children the same way they educate other children and provide them access to an equitable education. And so that's really important to me. And Currently, I'm not sure that we are interested when it comes to our Native American children, on all levels. And I'm not saying all districts. I'm just saying that sometimes that is still occurring, that our children do not have access the way other non-Native children have access. And I'm not sure if Mr. Stan wanted to say anything. I'm getting.
No, thank you very much. And I guess we'll wait for comments then.
Well, I did want to say, so I know that's a lot of heavy stuff, and if you have medicine, you might want to start burning it right now. If we were in person, that's what we would do, and we would probably circle up. I know there's a lot of us on the line. I'm super grateful to see some of you, or so many of you. Thank you for being here and letting us share. But we always like to, let you know how we've maintained our sense of humor. That stereotype is true. We are very humorous people. We love to feel joy and happiness, and we like to share that with other people. Look at this little Vanessa's face here. That smile says everything, and that's part of our storytelling group. This is my grandma here with my aunties. But I just want to share that we are doing work, right? Decolonization efforts. We are in schools. We are in the classrooms. We are teaching the language. We are running Native and Indigenous clubs on campus, empowering our young people, letting them know what their advocacy options are, and letting them know how they can support themselves. And be, the next generation of survivors, and carry on their history, their preservation, their culture, their people. There's resources out there if you're ever looking for them. Mr. Stan and I can help point you in the right direction. Again, a lot of our reservations have education centers if anybody wants to support them in any way. We have fiestas all the time. Many of us are not powwow nations here, but we have powwow transplants that we welcome, and we have joined them in their efforts, and their celebrations. Are some of our celebrations are still called fiestas. So look out for those. So we got lots of work going on out here. And Mr. Stan, I want to make sure you get to talk about your work too.
Oh, just real quick, I am also the director of Kumeyaay Community College. We are the only operational tribal college in California that offers an accredited associate's degree program in Kumeyaay studies. And one of the things that Kumeyaay Community College was built on was, so we tell our story. Many times, I mean, if you look at the history books, if you look at the way things have been taught in an education system, you hear it from the people who are in control. But now we want to empower our people. We want our story to be told. We want our children to know that, we are not victims, we are survivors, we're powerful people, we are warriors, and that things like when we sing our songs, that is an act of resistance. When we speak our language, that is an act of resistance. When we are in our traditional territory, we have not been destroyed. We are strong people, and we continue to stay strong. And we want to pass that on to our next generation. Our relatives from before, our ancestors have taught us these things. Ms. Admire, her matau, her spirit is strong because her ancestors are in her. We want to pass that on to our next generation. We tell our young people, you are the ancestors of those who are yet to come. What legacy do you want to leave them? So this is the legacy we want to leave them, is to be strong. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Stan. And I put here that one of Mr. Stan's work that he does, some of the work he does is mentoring us, and so appreciative of the givingness of his heart. And thank you so much. And the other leaders in our area too. You know, there's a group of people who do this work with us, and we're very grateful for them as well. So I know, Miss Andrea, you would like to open the floor to your panelists. Sierra, I see you. So I'll stop sharing now. So we can see.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So we can see each other.
I just wanted to say thank you, Amy and Stan, for your knowledge and for sharing that with us. And we received a lot of questions, a lot of wonderful questions, and we wish we could get to all of them, but we only have time to answer a few. But we want to thank everyone, and we hope that you continue to engage with and have more opportunities to learn from and be in good relationship with Indigenous communities in our area. So the first question we have is, how can folks support the Payomkawichum and Kumeyaay peoples in various organizational work or support the Rincon Youth Education Center, the Kumeyaay Community College, tutoring, etc.?
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Stan.
You first.
So as far as supporting us directly, I guess is just you know, remembering we're out here when you're thinking about creating events or doing things on campus, or, you know, trying to think who could benefit from this most, right? If we were to do a program or host something, right? Is to reach out to our education centers. You know, and again, always speaking about us in the present, in every way. Yeah.
And for me, if anybody is interested in learning, come take classes at Kumeyaay Community College. They're open to Kumeyays and non-Kumeyays. This would be a great opportunity for you to learn in a very safe environment, and, you know, to be able to ask these questions and find the answers. And if we don't have the answer, we'll ask one of our elders. So that's one of the things I can think of right now. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask the next question. First, I wanted to say, again, I'm so grateful for you both sharing your knowledge in this space. It's been really a privilege. The next question that we have is, UCSD as an institution has started to implement land acknowledgements as a pretty frequent practice in meetings and classroom settings. What action points can folks take, folks in this room, to accompany this practice of land acknowledgements? And further, like, how can they be in good relation to Payomkawichum and Kumeyaay communities?
Mr. Stan.
I was going to say, go ahead, Ms. Admire.
I think land acknowledgements, and there's a lot of other scholars who are well more versed than me. I've seen them on some of our Facebook posts that I share with some people who are probably on the line today. You know, so I'll just speak personally. Land acknowledgements, like I said, in this area, I think that they should acknowledge all the 4 tribes of San Diego County. Depending on where you're at, you acknowledge that tribe whose land you're on, of course. If it's the Kumeyaay land, the Payomkawichum, and then you know, acknowledge all the other tribes in the area. Obviously, it should come with action, right? So what is it I can do? My friend Kate Bishop just proposed a acknowledgement to the Chula Vista Elementary Unified School District, in which she had really good actions, which was, you know, to have a better curriculum in place, to talk about us in the present, to teach the staff, you know, more appropriate ways that they can be more trauma informed, right? So you really want to be intentional in your actions. and the place. Do they make sense in your organization? Do they make sense in the setting that you're in? You know, how are they going to uplift the organization and the communities that you serve?
For me, part of the land acknowledgement is it's more than just acknowledging the land, it's where we are at. An example, La Jolla. This is where University of California, San Diego, the main campus is at. So it's one of our sacred sites. Matkulahui is where they got the word La Jolla from, place of the caves. You know, without going into detail about it, it teaches us many things. It teaches us about the ocean. It teaches about the changes in the seasons, and it also teaches about the ice ages that came. All these different things we talk about. We were able to walk to those mountains that are now islands on the ocean. So it speaks to a time when the water was farther back. Our people always valued education, but many times Western education tends to discount our own native epistemology, our organic scholars. An example of that is when they found those remains over by the chancellor's house at UCSD. What happened? It was white archaeologists that had said they couldn't be Kumeyaay. It's too old. It was somebody else. And like Ms. Admire and myself said, we say we were here since time immemorial. In our creation stories, it talks about that. So, you know, when we talk about these things, part of that is to take a look at what our knowledge base, you know, I mean, I'll tell you right now, many people in Western society think that their knowledge, their education system is incredible. Well, look at some of the wildfires that have happened up in the mountains. Our people practice controlled burning. We had a fire science that was owned to the area. Well, you know what? They discounted it, and now look what's happening. You know, they're coming back to us. That if they would have listened to us in the beginning, we wouldn't have these problems. But so anyway, not just a land acknowledgement, but also acknowledging our epistemology, our place here. And if you want to learn, come talk to us. That's all I have.
Yes, like Mr. Stan says, I'm always telling people, we have, as we said at the beginning, the most reservations any county in the country, the most federally recognized tribes in the state of the country. And so resources are all around. There's no reason that teachers should be teaching curriculum without reaching out to a Native person. Yes, we should be in every classroom. And it would be our pleasure, you know, we want to be there. And, you know, we can organize ourselves very quickly when these spaces need to be entered into. And so please remember that.
Okay, our next question is, how do things stand with relationships with Kumeyaay and relatives across the border and ability to cross back and forth between Mexico and the United States?
Okay. With the Kumeyaay en Baja, es porque yo puedo hablar español. Es porque yo soy encantador. Y yo fui a otro lado por cantar un ejemplo en velorios o cosas así. So, in other words, what I'm saying, I speak Spanish too. There's many Kumeyaay who speak Spanish because, you know, some people are singers or other things going back and forth. This border was not created by the Kumeyaay. This border was created when they partitioned the United States and Mexico. The Kumeyaay and Baja are Kumeyaay. They're not Mexican, they're Kumeyaay. And one of the problems that we've had is because of the border, it's difficult to get Kumeyaay people. They don't have pass and repass ability, like, let's say the Mohawks, because of the Jay Treaty between Canada and the United States. Remember, the 18 treaties here in California were never ratified. So the reservations were created by executive order. With that said, there's been an organization that was started in the 1990s, early 2000s called the Kumeyaay Border Task Force. Well, it created laser visas for the Kumeyays in Baja to come across. However, it needs to be strengthened. Getting Kumeyays across this side has pretty much been done by the good graces of whoever's in charge over at the Border Patrol or Customs Office. We want to make a clearer policy for that. But, you know, to be honest with you, of the approximately 4,623 Kumeyaay who reside on both sides of the border, there's about 39 who still speak the language. And most of them are in Baja. If you look at the UNESCO 9 factors of language, vitality and endangerment, 5 being stable, 0 being extinct, Kumeyaay language is listed as a 1, critically endangered. And if we do not use our assets, you know, utilize our assets who are language speakers in Baja, our language could go dormant. So it's important that we work together. We're the same people. Did that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you, Dr. Han.
Okay.
And I don't know our standing on that, but our language is very similar.
So our next question is from the POC fungi community. I'll paste it to the chat. With so many movements intersecting and folks really reimagining strategies and creating pathways to decolonize and get land back for the people on the lands we occupy, have there been intertribal discussions on how land back may look and roll out for future generations?
This is a very sensitive subject. I think Mr. Stan agrees. One of the reasons, because I'm always asking, what is the problem? Why don't people want us to be well? Why does it shake their privilege so much that we would be well and be able to be self-sustaining, right? And one of those reasons is, one, we might be educated enough to actually run our own businesses and not have to hire outside. And another one is that we might come after our lands again, right? And so that's always a really tricky subject. And it's one of those spaces where I feel like we do shrink ourselves and dare not to think of. And I don't, you know, I think for many of us, because it makes people uncomfortable to think of us getting our land back, you know, especially our lands. You know, my grandfather's villages are at Camp Pendleton on the beach, you know, who's going to give us that land back? But there are instances where I think we can work together. Like one of the projects that I would like to see is we are looking for 2 acres where we can have a rehab center, right? Maybe somebody out there has 2 acres that they're not using, that they could re-gift back to the people, right? That we can use for a center to care for our people and put it to good use in the healing process and healing journey of our people. So for me, that's something that comes to mind when I think about getting land back just right now, something we could do. But I'm sure there's longer conversations that can be had around that too, and maybe Mr. Stan has had those conversations.
Yes. When we talk about land, remember this: we never abrogated on any parts of those treaties, and even before that, the land from from the coast all the way to that. I mean, this is our traditional territory. To be able to reclaim that is very important for us. I'm going to give you an example. How many of you ever been out by Warner's Hot Springs? Anybody ever go by the Boy Scout camp? They call it the Mataguay Boy Scout Reservation. That was part of San Isabel. But when they forcibly removed the Cupeños from Jacuapin or Warner's Hot Springs, they also attacked the village over there. And it was Kit Carson that did that. He attacked, there was a battle that took place, and also in San Felipe, and a lot of people were moved. Well, the bottom line is this: the Boy Scouts finally got that as their reservation. However, there's graveyards over there that relatives, living relatives in San Isabel, you know, are connected to those people over there. Well, these lands, we want them back. You know, this is our traditional territory. We want that because we, you know, I mean, when we talk about a reservation, you know, reservations were created to confine Native people. And, you know, for us to continue to function, to continue to thrive as a Native people, we need to have our land base, and it needs to be acknowledged. Now, then there's other things, and it's kind of a slippery slope. And you know, when we talk about intertribal, you know, land claims, that's something that we continue to discuss intertribally, and I'll leave that out of here for now. But I do believe it's important that, you know, as far as land, to have land returned back to our people.
I think it really speaks to how important and connected we are to the land and to the earth. And then again, that connects us back to our creation stories, that we believe we are tied to this earth. We are a part of it. We don't exist without it. So going back to the land acknowledgement question, when people say, well, if we have to acknowledge you, we have to acknowledge everyone else. Well, no, you don't. You just don't. We are the people born of this land. We are the people born of this earth. And, you know, there's an article my friend, Dr. Teresa Greger wrote for the San Diego History Journal. And she's quoting Rupert and Jeanette Costo. But they recognize that the indigenous people of this area have never moved, no matter how difficult it became, or how famined it became, or how unmanageable, or how we were being tracked and murdered and killed. We stayed and we held on. And that's what we're still doing. We're holding on to this land. And so, you know, any reclamation of the land that we can, you know, discuss, I think is important.
Yes, and you know, it goes back to what you're saying. This is our holy land. This is our, we didn't come from Jerusalem. That's not our holy, this is our holy land. These mountains are our sacred mountains. This ocean is our sacred ocean. So this is what it means to us. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you guys so much. That was incredibly powerful and informative. And honestly, wish we could spend way more than an hour. I feel like there's so much to learn from you both. One last question before we wrap up. Is Amy going to get her PhD?
I kind of saw that. I'm trying to think who's out there asking me that besides Mr. Stan all the time. Yes, I'm looking for somewhere to do that at. Yes. Andrea is saying, yes, UCSD is a prospect. I appreciate the ask. I will be the first doctor in my family, yes.
All right. I will be there when you get it.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to this talk. We want to especially thank Amy and Dr. Stan Rodriguez for sharing their knowledge with us. Gus, is there anything else you wanted to say to wrap it up before we say goodbye to everyone?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. This was an amazing event and experience and space.
Thank you for having us. To all the participants still on the line, I want to acknowledge you spending time with us. And I put my email in the chat for anyone who, you know, we didn't get to your questions. It's hard to look and facilitate. So I know we do, Stan and I like to acknowledge and try to get to everyone we can. So you're welcome to email me. Thank you so much. And to know that you are also honored. I recognize we all share space. So our work is not meant to take away from anyone else's work or anyone else's experiences here on this land. It's just meant to lift our people up who need this healing right now. We are in a recovery from everything we just shared with you. We're in recovery from genocide. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of strength to go through recovery. So thank you for supporting us.
All right. For me, I just want to say to everybody, whoever's left, Maya Chamebshaw, Napumahankanam, Napumasukum Nawiruma. And what I said was, may the Creator watch over all of you. May you continue to have beautiful journeys where you are going in life. And until we see each other again, thank you very much. And it was great to work with you, Amy.
Oh ho, oi iyik. So blessed. And to our friends at the UCSD Ethnic Studies cohort, great to work with you as well.
Yes, yes.
All right. I always like reading the chat, so it's hard to jump off.
Amy, I'm going to get going. I got to go teach a class. So
yes, we have storytelling tonight too. Whoever's left on the line, 5 to 6. Rincon Youth Storytellers. All right. Good luck with your class, Mr. Stan.
Thank you. Take care, Ms.
Yes, we'll go offline now. Miss
there a way that
Andrea.
Yeah, we
Or
can
we
just
can
take
stay
turns.
on. The numbers are dwindling. I just wanted to see the Q&A or the Q questions in the chat. You guys said
we saved it.
okay. Thank you so much. Then I'll see ya.
Thank you, Amy.
Oho, Hatya. Thank you.